If you're looking to create a custom navigation menu with multiple levels to your Canvas Power Apps, I'll show you the exact steps I took to build this one so you can add it to your new or existing apps. Or better yet, I hope you get inspired to create your own. So let's go. So here I'm starting with a blank Canvas app, and I'll set up all the screens we're going to be working with. So I have 7 total screens. I've titled them Home, About Us, Contact, Location, Resources, Overview, and Reports. They're all blank for now, so we're going to add the navigation bar once we build it. And before we start building out our component, I want to define what our menu items will be. So we're going to go to App and go to the Formulas property. And this is where we're going to define our menu items. So I'll call it menu items. We'll set it equal to, and we're going to nest a table, and we're going to have a few items in here. The first one, let's call it ID1, and let's give it a name property, and let's title it home. And we're going to give it a screen, and we're going to reference the home screen. And we're going to close that record. We're going to do a comma, and we can set up our next menu item, and let's call it ID2. And we're going to name it company. So this one is going to have multiple levels. So at the top of the hierarchy, it's going to just be company. And instead of defining a screen, we're going to actually define a submenu property. And we're going to create a new table. So we're going to define a new table with its own records, which I'll set up an ID, and let's call it 2.1. And that name is going to be called About Us. And it's going to have a screen property on the About Us screen. And we're going to close this record, and we can add another sub-level here. So let's create another record, ID 2.2, name, let's call it contact, and let's give it a screen, contact. We'll close that record. And let's do one more, ID 2.3, and let's call it location. And the screen it's going to reference is our location. And we can close this table off, and we're going to close off the submenu. And we're just going to create a total of 4 main menu items, and we're going to have another submenu item here, and we're just going to close off this table and add a semicolon. What we want to define next is the menu theme. So we're going to establish a few colors of when an item is selected or is not selected, and we'll just reference those colors throughout the build of our component. So we'll call it menu theme, and we're going to set it equal to, and I'm just going to paste this. So basically we have our menu color, which is going to be our default color for the menu. We're going to have a menu selected, which is going to make it a bit darker when an item is selected. The submenu will have its own color value, so it's going to be a little bit lighter than the main navigation menu, and we're also going to have a color value when it's selected. So I'm going to reference these when we reference colors in the navigation component, which is coming up next. So let's go ahead and go back into our screens. We'll go to components, and we're going to do new component, and I'm just going to rename this top nav. And so something very important, we want to make sure we turn on access app scope. This is going to allow us to reference our variables that we establish within the component to our app and vice versa. We're also going to set up the width to app.width. And the height we're going to change later. We'll leave it here for now as it is, but we will come back to this in a later step of the video. And next, let's create a horizontal container. And let's call it con root. And we're going to have the justify at the start. Align vertical will be stretch. The X and Y properties, make sure those are 0. Width will be parent.width and height will be parent.height. Border radius, we're going to set to 0, and drop shadow will be none. Within that container, we're going to insert another container, but this time a vertical one, and let's call it con company. We're going to leave its justify and align properties at the start. We're going to set the minimum height to 0, minimum width to 0, border radius 0, drop shadow none. Next, we're going to insert a horizontal container, and we'll call it con company 2. And we'll leave the justify and align at the start. Minimum width we'll set to 0. We're going to turn off flexible height and set it to 50. And again, we'll remove the border radius and drop shadow. Now we've been doing a lot of containers within containers. That's going to continue to be the case. We're going to do one more. We'll do another horizontal container and we'll rename it con company 3. And we're going to leave its justify at the start, align vertical, we'll move it to center. We're going to give a gap of 10. We're going to do a left padding of 20. Minimum height we'll set to 0. We're going to set the minimum width to 0. And we're going to remove the border radius and drop shadow. And we're also going to update the fill color to our menu theme.menu. And so next we're going to insert an image. And I'll rename it IMG company. I'm going to set it to fill. We're going to do a height of 30 and a width of 30. And we're going to do a border radius of 15. And this is where you would typically insert or upload a new image or media file, and then you can reference it and add the company logo there. I'm just going to keep it at the sample image. Sometimes I have to remove it and re-add it in order for it to show for some reason. It must be just like a Power Apps bug, but yeah, this is how it would look. You would just upload your own company logo in there. Next, we want to actually insert a label. So we're going to do a text label. I'll rename it LBL company. The text is going to be, I guess, the company name. I'm just going to write company for now. We're going to change it to Lato, font size 10. I'm going to align in container to stretch with a minimum height of 0 and a flexible width on and a minimum width of 0. And we're just going to change the color to white. Next, it's time to add our gallery, which is going to contain all of our menu items. So we're going to select our con root container and we're going to insert a gallery, and it's going to be a blank horizontal gallery. And we're going to rename it gal menu. And we're going to update some of its settings. So of course, the items property, we're going to set to menu items. And we're going to set the minimum height to 0. And we're going to turn off flexible width, and we're actually going to define a new width. And we're going to do self.allItemsCount times 150. So this is going to be based on the number of items that we have, and we're going to give it 150 pixels each. Template padding, we're going to set to 0. Our template size is going to be self.width divided by self.allItemsCount. So it's going to dynamically change based on the number of items that it has. We're going to turn off show scroll bar. And as we do with most of our galleries, we're going to turn off delay item loading. So we're going to set it to false. So now we can go ahead and click on the edit gallery and insert a container in a vertical container. And let's rename it con menu. Justify will be at the start. The align horizontal will be stretch. And we're going to set its X and Y to 0. The width is going to be parent.template width. the height is going to be parent.height. And we're going to set the border radius to 0, drop shadow to none. Within this container, we're going to insert a container, but just a regular container. And we're going to call it conMenu2. We're going to set its minimum width to 0, and we're going to turn off flexible height and set that equal to 50. And we're going to turn off border radius and drop shadow. Now within this container, we're going to insert a new button. So let's go insert a button and let's rename it BTN Select Menu. And we're going to update a few properties here. We're going to delete the text. We're going to set its X and Y to 0. We're going to set the width to parent.width and height to parent.height. We're going to go to some of the fill properties and we're going to set its fill to transparent. Hover fill will be RGBA 200, 200, 0.1. And pressed fill is going to be color fade self.hover fill. And we're going to make it 20% darker. And on the button's onSelect property, we're going to enter this code here. And if you want, you can pause the video here so you can note this down. Within conMenu2, let's insert a horizontal container. So let's send it to back. And let's rename it conMenu3. We'll justify to the center. We're going to align to stretch. We're going to set its X and Y properties to 0. Width is going to be parent.width and height will be parent.height. We're going to do left and right padding of 20. The fill property, we're going to set to this code here. And if the app's active screen matches this item's screen or its submenu, then the menu theme is going to be menu selected, otherwise menu theme.menu. And we're going to set the border radius to 0, drop shadow to none. And next, let's insert a text label and call it LBL item. We're going to set its text property to this item.name. We're going to change the font to Lato, font size 10. We're going to do center align. Minimum height will be 0. We're going to turn on flexible width and set the minimum to 0. We're going to change the color to white. And within the same container, we're going to insert an icon, and it's going to be a down arrow. And let's rename it ICN arrow. And we want the arrow to change based on if the menu is expanded or not. So we're going to change this icon property to this. If the var menu is open and this item ID equals the selected ID, we're going to give a chevron up. Otherwise, we're going to do a chevron down. And we're going to do a minimum height of 0. And we're going to do a width of 15. We're going to change the color to white. And we're going to change the visible properties. So it's only shown if the menu has a submenu. And so we're going to just say is not blank. This item dot submenu. So now it only shows up for the ones that do have a submenu. So let's click back on conMenu. And we're going to create a section for our submenu. So we're going to insert a container. And we're going to rename it conSubmenu. And we're going to change its minimum width to 0, minimum height to 0, and border radius. I'm going to change this to 0, and we're going to update just the radius bottom left to 10. And the bottom right to 10. And we're going to drop shadow none. Now within this container, we're going to insert a gallery, and it's going to be a blank vertical gallery. And we're going to rename it gal submenu. The items property, we're going to change to this item.submenu. We're going to set its X and Y properties to 0. Width is going to be parent.width. Height will be parent.height. The template size, we're going to change to 40. Padding, we're going to change to 0. We're going to turn off show scroll bar, and we're going to turn off the delay item loading. So we're going to set that to false. Now we want to have another invisible button here. So we're going to take it from our original menu here, btn select menu. We're going to copy this button, and under this gallery, we're going to edit and Control V to paste. We're going to edit the formula bar. So we're basically going to take out this whole switch function, and we're going to change it to set var menu open to false. And we're going to also navigate to this item.screen with a fade transition, here. And we're going to update some of its properties. We're going to make sure the X and Y are set to 0. The width is going to be parent.width. Height will be parent.template height. And then within here, we're also going to insert a label. So we're going to do a text label, and let's rename this LBL submenu. And let's send it behind our button. So we're going to reorder and send to back. And so its text property is going to be this item.name. We're going to change this to Lato, font size 10. We're going to make sure X and Y is equal to 0. The width is going to be parent.width. And the height is going to be parent.template height. And we're going to add a left padding of 40 so that it aligns with the top menu. We're going to change the color to white. And for the fill property, we're going to change it to an if statement. And if the app.activeScreen equals this item.screen, then I want the menu theme dot submenu selected. Otherwise, I want menu theme dot submenu. Now you can see anything that has a submenu is going to be visible. So the way to get around this is we're going to go back to gal submenu, and we're going to change its visible property to var menu open. So only show if it's open, and this item.id equals to var menu selected.id. So now if we hold Alt and click on company, you'll see that it shows up. If we click it again, it's going to hide it, and it just works with all of the submenus. And so now we can actually go back to our top nav and update the height property. So we're going to do another if statement here. So if var menu is open, then I want var menu height. Otherwise, I want it to equal 50. And if you remember, the var menu height is dependent on how many items the submenu has. And so it'll automatically adjust based on that. So you can see one has 3. When it goes to one that has 2, it's going to shrink that to that size. So we're almost there. We're going to just add a user image. So we're going to go to con root, and we're going to insert another container, and it's going to be a horizontal one. And let's rename this to con user. And we're going to justify center, align center. We're going to align in container to start with a height of 50. And minimum width, we're going to actually turn off. And we're going to say the width and define it as 70. We're going to delete the border radius and the drop shadow. And for the fill property, we're going to actually use our theme. So we're going to do menu theme dot menu. And now within that container, we're going to insert an image. And let's rename it img user. We're going to change the image position to fill. The image property is going to be user.image. And we're going to make the height and hard code it to 30, the width to 30, and the border radius will be 15. And you should be good to go. So now we can go back to our screens and start inserting it. So let's go to custom, top nav. And we can just copy this and go to all the other pages and paste it in. And so if we click play, we can click home, expand company, go to the about us page, and it's going to navigate through all the pages. And you can see if we show it with the screens visible, you'll see it navigating back and forth through all the pages. Now, when we click preview, you'll notice that there's still some white spaces between the gallery items. And I don't know if it's a bug in Power Apps or not, but if someone knows, please let me know in the comments. The way I've been able to fix this is go back into the components, and so we're going to select top nav and then insert a container. Let's do a horizontal container. We'll rename it con menu background, and we're going to reorder this and send it to back. And we're going to change the X and Y to 0. The width is going to be parent.width, and the height we're going to hard code to match that of our menu bar, which is going to be 50. And we're going to remove the border radius and drop shadow. And the fill color, we're going to utilize our menu theme dot menu color. And that should do it. So now when we go preview, you'll notice that all the white separating lines are gone. And so there you have it, a fully functional multi-level navigation bar for your Power Apps. Thanks for watching and see you next time.